And welcome back to By the Way. My name is Justin Smith. Wait, just kidding.
You look great, Justin. What have you been doing?
Okay, and as we all giggle, let me introduce you to this episode. This is the girls episode, all right? Broadway women episode, bringing you our By the Way this week. Not for any particular reason, just that the men are all in LA right now at a conference learning how to be great pastors. We thank you for your service in the sunny state of California. And we are here telling you about our next gospel project lesson. So I've got some great ladies around the table with me today. First, I have Jamie Smith. We may not have Justin Smith, but we have Mrs. Jamie. Mrs. Justin Smith. Yes, so she is teaching our youth middle school girls, correct? High school girls. Yeah. Okay, so she will be our youth know-it-all this week on all things grades 7 through 12, 6 through 12. But she's also got kids in the grade school and the preschool, so she's just
all over the place.
She's just she needs coffee.
Yeah. And then next to her, we have Miss Celeste Waldron. She's our pre-K director. And on my left, I have Mrs. Corey Roberts, who is one of my grade school teachers. She teaches our 4th to 5th grade kiddos here at Broadway. And if I failed to mention, my name is, in fact, not Justin Smith. I am Lauren Hansen. I'm the grade school ministry director here at Broadway. So, yeah, we are here together today. We are going to be talking about session 5 in our gospel project material, okay? So we have been with Joshua and the Israelites for a while. They have wandered for so long in the desert, 40 years to be exact. And all this disobedient generation that failed over and over again. Yes. They have gone on and bit the dust, including Moses. Rest in peace, right? So Moses is no longer with us, but Joshua is leading the people. So we have seen them cross the Jordan River into the Promised Land. They have already conquered many lands, many societies, civilizations, but not without some major hiccups along the way, right? So what have they experienced thus far that's been a little speed bump in this conquest?
Achan was huge, that we talked about last week in class, being disobedient, and we got to see how that affected everybody. That was a big deal.
There was some trickery with the Gibeonites.
Yep.
So that was pretty big.
Gibeonites tricked them into making a covenant with them. Therefore, they could not conquer them.
Yep. So they're still in the land.
Tied into another war with some other kings. So, yeah, lots of drama. Would not be the Old Testament without some drama, right? So that is where we left off, right? So there's like a full book here, okay? Because this week we are talking about the last 2 chapters in the book of Joshua, where Joshua bids farewell to the Israelite people. He is about to die. His time as their leader is about to be ended. So what happens in the in-between? What's going on here?
I think they're crossing over and taking the actual land.
Right. So they are conquesting, they are taking the land. But in chapter 13, there's this note that says Joshua is very old and he's not going to be able to see the conquest of the land. So instead, God directs him to go ahead and divide the land among the people before it is conquered. Okay, so this is before the land is conquered. He goes ahead and tells each tribe what their possession will be. So really, that's what the majority of the book of Joshua is about. This is going to be your portion. Now go and conquer it. Okay, so he only divides the land among 10 tribes. Any idea why that is? Trivia point?
Don't 3 of them stay east of the Jordan?
Some of them don't go.
Yes.
They liked where they were.
This looks good. We'll stay here.
Yeah. So some of the tribes, so Reuben, Gad, and part of the tribe of Manasseh, they really liked the land to the east of the Jordan. It was well suited for livestock. And so Joshua actually was somewhat upset with them when they first came to him with this idea. But they said, no. We will still go into the promised land. We will still help Israelite conquer the land.
Yep.
And then once that has been fulfilled, then let us go back east. Joshua was like, okay, sounds like a pretty good idea. And so that's what happens. Okay, so we actually see them go home in Joshua 22. So they've been with the people all through Joshua. In Joshua 22, they go back. Okay, so there are 12 tribes, but we know that 3 are east of the Jordan, and the Levites actually don't have a portion of land, right? So that math is very confusing in there. Even though Joseph was one of the 12 sons, his portion is actually divided among his 2 sons. So lots going on. But anyway, the land west of the Jordan was divided between the 10 tribes that settled to the west. So that's where we're at. Joshua has divided the land. He's given them this awesome pep talk. Now you go and conquer and take the land. And now I will say my farewells. Okay, so that is what we will be talking about this week in our lesson. So let's just go around the table and talk about some of those main points for the week. So Celeste, I'll start with you in the preschool. What are y'all talking about?
So this week, our main story point is that Joshua reminded the people to worship and obey God. So we're going to be focusing a lot on just him reminding them of all the things that God has already done for them, how faithful he's been to them, not just in the promised land and conquering it, but even as far back as Abraham and all the promises he made back then. So he's really going to kind of give them a history lesson, and just this thought of just remember what he has done. Remember what he has done, and because of these things, obey and worship him. So we're going to be talking a lot about that with them. And then also tying that into their big picture question that we've been doing through the whole unit, which is, why can we trust God? That we can trust God because he does what he says he will do. And they have seen that as they look back at everything that the Lord has done. So we're going to keep it tight into that, and just, really focus on how faithful God has been.
Very good. Awesome. All right. For the kids, grades 1st through 5th grade, Corey, what are we talking about?
I think we're going to be talking about some of that too. We're going to look at how you can see through the things that Joshua reminds them of that God has done for them, that God keeps his promises, that God does things for his own glory and for the good of his people. So even when we don't understand what God is asking us to do, which, God asked them to do some strange things, marching around Jericho, but not making any sound, and then screaming, and that we don't have to necessarily understand what God is asking us to do, but we have to be faithful and obedient, and God has our good in mind. And just remembering that these stories build our faith. These are things that are reminders to us, and that God deserves our worship and our obedience.
Very good. Yeah. All right. And for the youth, what's going on there, Jamie?
We're doing the same thing. I'm focusing in on worship and obedience. Our main point will be true worship cannot happen without our obedience. And our subpoints that we're going to work through are: God is worthy of our full worship, and we're going to kind of flesh out maybe how we're half-hearted in our worship, how we kind of divide our loyalties, and also how our worship includes obedience. So the fact that we display our faith by our obedience.
Very good. Awesome. So, so we're going to all be looking together at just, once again, reiterating how God has proven himself faithful and how that should spur us on to obedience to him and worship of only him. So really important lessons for the Israelites as they're going into this pagan country, going to conquer all these people rather than just live among them, what God is calling them to. So we're talking about chapters 23 and 24. So let's just do a brief overview of what those chapters are talking about. Okay. So in chapter 23, Joshua's final words in charge. It's very similar, actually, to some of the language we see in chapter 1. This phrase, be strong and courageous. I'm sure you have that on a poster from the 90s somewhere, right? A
Go to
relic.
Hobby Lobby. It's
Or
everywhere.
Hobby Lobby, right?
Do not be
Hobby
afraid.
Lobby.
Yeah, so many people love that verse for good reason. It's a good verse, right? So Joshua once again is calling the people to be strong and courageous as they go forward, okay? And he's passing the mantle. So, yeah, final words are important. I mean, if you want to
They're
look
so
at
good too. Do not look to
Yeah.
the right or the left.
Yeah.
Like it's so good.
Yeah, so let me just read those verses for you guys in verse 5 to 6 of chapter 23. The Lord your God will push them back before you and drive them out of your sight, and you shall possess their land, just as the Lord your God promised you. Therefore, be very strong to keep and do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, turning aside for it neither to the right hand nor to the left. So stay true to the word of God. That's what Joshua's charge is to them. So the words are very sweet and precious, but then also the place where they gather is very sweet and precious. So we see the people of Israelite, they come together at Shechem. We see this at the beginning of chapter 24. So Shechem, we've all heard this word before. It's like one of those Bible words you hear often, but
But
you're
can't spell.
like, yeah, you can't spell it, and you're like, I know this is important, but I don't remember exactly where. So, where have we seen Shechem before?
We saw it when Abraham came out with his family, and I think that was the first place that the Lord brought him to give him the promises of
Right.
you're going to have offspring, and this land is going to be yours. And Abraham built an altar there to him.
Right. So that's in Genesis 12. The covenant with Abraham was established at Shechem. So the father of Israel, that is where God started this relationship with him. So how sweet that they're here once again. And also we see Jacob there, right? Jacob brings his family back to the land of Shechem after he meets back up with Esau from all those years of wandering and being with his uncle Laban and all the drama with his sister wives, right? So they come back to Shechem and build an altar there and worship. And in fact, we're going to see at the end of this chapter in Joshua, Joseph's remains are buried here. So, I mean, you got 3 heavy-hitting Old Testament saints that have a correlation with this place. So I'm sure this is like sacred ground for the people, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just the place itself, them gathering there is very important, right? And so why are they there? What's their purpose? Why did Joshua bring them there?
I feel like I'm talking way too much, but I feel like it's neat to see the full circle of the Lord calling Abraham and choosing Abraham, and then Abraham responding to that call. And here we have Joshua bringing the offspring that the Lord promised to this land that he promised, and the same call is there again. Like, I've chosen you, I've selected you, I've gone before you. Now choose me and go and conquest.
Yeah, it's like this renewal as he's about to pass on. We have to renew this again because we did it before. Like, each time we have a new leader come in, we have to kind of renew this covenant that we've made.
Right.
And it's a good reminder, right, for them to be in that land that means a lot to them. They know what's happened there. I'm sure that they all know that. And he knows what's coming, like what is fixing to happen when they go. And I mean, I'm sure Joseph knows from Moses and all of that, how quickly they forget. And so this is a good place to have that reminder before they go into these lands.
Yeah, it reminds me of the stones in the Jordan River. Like, here it is. Here's another altar.
Yes.
Like, come and remember this, and how much we need those reminders because we fall off. We fall into idolatry, just like we're going to see them do.
Right. Yeah. And there actually is an altar in this section. Are y'all talking about it? The altar that Reuben
Yes.
and Gad and the East tribes
Oh, yeah.
built?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to summarize that real fast?
You can.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the Eastern tribes, when they're dismissed, they build like a memorial stone, like an altar there at
that's right. Yeah.
the Jordan, and the
Yes.
people get really mad. They're like, they're worshiping false gods, and like they're about to go to war with their
Off with their
brothers,
heads.
right? And they come back and they're like, no. Like, we just know we're not living among you, but we just want you guys to know that we're like still worshiping the one true God that you do, and we're like still your people, you know. And they're like, okay, that's fine. Bye. So anyway, that's the altar that is built in this section. So another nice little footnote. So so they're gathered here at Shechem to renew the covenant. And by the way, I had to throw in a by the way, right?
Yes.
You definitely did.
We have to. Every episode has to have a by the way. So did you guys know that chapter 24 is written in the common pattern of a suzerain vassal treaty from the ancient Near East?
Well, you definitely stole my by the way. No, I did not know that. No.
Okay, let's all just go around the table and say suzerain 5 times really fast.
No, thank you.
No.
I want to hear how everyone says
Suzerain.
that.
I want to hear how you say it, Celeste.
Why?
I don't know.
Listen, y'all keep picking on me for my
you
voice.
are
Only
northerners.
Suzerain.
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 Yes.
Not to be confused with Caesarean.
Yes.
Oh, I know that
Caesarean.
one. I know that one.
Late
Suzerain.
summer, we're not going there. Okay, so
Suzerain.
anyway, deep dive.
This is why I don't get invited.
That
was perfect.
So the Suzerain Vassal Treaty, it was a very normal, common custom back then. Now, suzerain is different from sovereignty. We may be more familiar with sovereignty, like a monarchy or a king, queen, who has ultimate authority in a society or civilization. Suzerain is a little bit different, okay, because the vassal still has some sense of independence and self-rule, okay? Now, it was much more common back in the day. We really don't have many suzerain vassal societies now. There is one I found from the very trusted Wikipedia. Okay?
Yes. Yes. Where is
But
that?
India has a vassal state, Bhutan. Have you heard of Bhutan?
I thought that was a fruit,
No.
though.
Okay, so Bhutan is
know
a
if it's a
country property vassal, I don't know, except province maybe, of India. And so India provides them with like military training and like finances and goods and all of these things. And they then in turn like are loyal to India, but they still function as an independent state. So anyway, there you go.
By the way.
Interesting.
Good by the way.
Yeah.
I may have to look into that a little more when I leave. That's interesting.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, the Suzerain Vassal Treaty, it was like a normal legal document back then. So what you would see in these documents is they would recount how the suzerain or how the authority giving figure in the relationship had shown grace to the vassal in the past. And that's what chapter 24 does, correct?
Yeah.
It recounts
Yeah.
all the ways that God has been faithful to the people of Israel over and over and over again. But then, in turn, these treaties would often mention how the vassals had responsibilities to the Caesarean leaders, right?
Right.
So they had to commit themselves in obedience and loyalty and fidelity
Wow.
to their leader, okay? It often mentioned blessings and curses if these things were not followed.
Look at that.
And then it would record the witnesses of the treaty, who was present at the time that this treaty was instated.
Interesting.
So, chapter 24 is, in fact, something that would have been very familiar to the people of Israel. This is not something new. This is what their culture does. So, they're like, you know what? God's a really good leader. He's been faithful to us. We're going to commit our ways to him and obey him. And he promises blessings if you do that. So, kind of fun little by the way
Absolutely.
fact there for
That's
chapter
cool.
24.
That is awesome.
So, that is our lesson in a nutshell, Joshua's farewell to the people. So as we finish, let's just discuss some of these application questions. So the first one is, what does this passage teach us about God? Thoughts?
Yeah, God shows up. God will always show up, and that he is true to his word. He has done everything that he said he would do up until this point. I mean, as we've started in Genesis, and kind of gone through. And it's just such a great reminder that like God has always done what he said he was going to do. And God has always been a lot of times the one that acted. Like, I will act. I just need you to follow. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to conquer these lands, not you. And God, that we can trust God. God will always do what he says.
Yeah, I think it just shows like so much like how trustworthy he is, how faithful he is, in spite of anything that we're doing.
Yes.
Like anything we're doing, anything that they did, like they obviously fell hard in some places and there were consequences to that, but the Lord still used that for his good purpose and his good plan, and to bring about his promises. And so regardless of what they were doing and regardless of what we're doing, whatever the Lord has in his will, it will be done. So I mean, we can try to do whatever we want, but ultimately it's going to be his. So
It actually takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah,
It does.
for sure. It does. It's a good thing. Yes. So, if that's who God is based on this passage, what do we see about man?
Well, I think we see the propensity of man to serve idols as you see him going up. Justin Smith, stop calling me.
Justin, we're podcasting.
Wait, he's here, right? Just kidding.
As you see Joshua coming up here to these people saying, what your forefathers did, what Abraham did, they served idols before God called them. The Israelites, they have, again, the lean to serving idols. We have that also. So we learn here that the Lord has called us. We have a responsibility to choose him and respond to that and turn away from the idols that just pull us in.
Yeah, that's good. Well, and too, like, let's not be all gloom and doom here, right? I mean, the people really do humble themselves
They do.
here in these chapters.
They do.
And they respond in humility, in gratitude, in faithfulness, in service. So kudos to the Israelites,
Good
because this
intentions.
is one of the times where we see them actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, right?
Yes.
Now, like we've all said, it is short-lived.
They
but
start strong.
Yes,
they always
do.
start strong.
They always start strong. Yes, very true. So, but ultimately, right, how do we see this passage point us to Christ? Our curriculum is called the Gospel Project because each lesson we want to tie this back to the gospel and the good news of Jesus Christ. So how can we do that with our kids this week?
Well, that ultimately the people, their instruction was to be courageous and not turn to the right or the left, but to choose the Lord and worship him alone. And the people fell at that. We've seen that in Moses, who was like their greatest leader, and he still was not perfect in that, but that Jesus came and he did not turn to the right or the left, and he was able to do that perfectly and choose the Lord and obey the Lord at every step.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. That's why we need to choose him. But that's what I thought of when I reread this.
Yeah.
And just practically, like when we're talking about, Jesus and we're seeing Joshua remind the followers of all that God has done. And I think practically for us, when we're talking about our children, this lesson in particular, but also many other opportunities that we can hopefully find, is to tell our kids often how God has been faithful in our lives and how Christ changed us and gave us a new heart, and really focusing on just giving our testimony to our children. Testimonies are powerful. I love hearing people's testimonies of how God called them to himself and changed their heart, because it's encouraging, it's uplifting, it's amazing to see that God is working in so many people. And our kids need to hear that too. They need to hear how we were and how we are now and how we are trying, just like the Israelites, we want to serve God. We desire to do that. We want to obey, but also that we fall short, obviously. But just that thought of just that constant, like, remembering how faithful God has been through our lives, through their lives, I think is a really practical way that we can take this home.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and two, I mean, you think about what these people are going to inherit. They're going to inherit the promised land. But disappointment comes with that. Like, they aren't going to conquer all of it. And so just even talking with your kids of like, look, I know you set out to do something, but sometimes you're going to be faced with disappointment. You know, and ultimately, like, our greatest thing that we need to conquer is this issue of sin and
Yes.
death in front of us. And God's like, yeah, you definitely can't do that one, you know? And but instead of being faced with disappointment, Jesus comes in as like, you know what? I'm going to conquer that one for you. And all you have to do is put your faith in me, and it is yours. Eternal life is yours if you will just take it.
Yeah.
You know, so what a good word about what Jesus does to us, for us, and for this people. I mean, these very people that were standing here at Shechem, God died for them too. So it's a good word.
Yeah.
So any other thoughts as we finish up? Alrighty. Well,
I think the ladies did a good job.
yeah, yeah. So men in the sunny state of California, peace to you. Hope you're enjoying your In-N-Out burgers,
Bring me a
feasting on
t-shirt.
MacArthur sermons.
Bring me a
I
Or
mean,
coffee
bring me a
mug.
burger for
You
real.
had fun in California, and all I got was this T-shirt.
I'll take what I can get.
But in all seriousness, whether you're in California or in South Haven, Mississippi, wherever you find yourself with your children, make sure you are discussing the gospel and the things of God's word by the way.